Let's bridge game one to game two for Pacers Cavs. What else did the Pacers do well besides shoot it great in game one? Plus, where can they adjust in game two? Where might the Cavs adjust and how injuries might be reshaping the series? We get to all of it today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Tuesday, happy game two, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today we are fortunate to be joined by Dave Searle as we look back at game one and bridge it to game two. What did the Pacers do well besides their shooting that they can carry into game two and hope to do well again? And where do they need to adjust, be better, or just change something for the sake of getting better for the rest of the series? All sorts of adjustments that the Cavs might look at too, how that might impact game two for the Pacers. We got to talk to Myles Turner and Rick Carlisle on Monday, so some of their insights on those changes. And Cavs banged up. How might those injuries change the series? And some chatter about the general state of the injured teams versus Pacers discussion. It's all coming today on Locked On Pacers with Dave Searle. A man who covered a Pacers-Cavs playoff series before it was cool, the podfather himself, Dave Searle, is here. He is also a man who did not affront the basketball gods today by fouling Mitchell Robinson in the second quarter of an NBA game. The basketball gods have had a good 2 days for Tony East. The diff shirts were terrible, and he punished the Cavs, or she. I don't know what the basketball gods are. Fouling on purpose, centers, is terrible, and the Knicks won that game. Good work by the basketball gods. Maybe Dave Searle is the basketball gods. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing. I'm ecstatic, just like any Pacers fan right now. Obviously, it could be a little excruciating to go through maybe the first 2 games you lose against a higher seed at home, then you try to win the next 2, and then you're trying to find the breakthrough. Got it done in game 1, so now the real optimism of maybe they can pull out the series. They lose the next game, it's not that big of a deal. It's a much better way to kind of engage with the series. So hard to be too disappointed in that. It's a good time to be a Pacers fan.
I mean, these are obviously very small sample stats, but like Tyrese Haliburton's never lost a home playoff game, and every time the Pacers with Tyrese Haliburton have won one road playoff game in a series, just one, they have won the series, right? Like winning game 1 was like impossibly huge, given what we've seen the path of this team be in these series. And yes, they made lots of shots. Kenny Atkinson said it. Rick Carlisle said it. And we've all talked about that. Dave, we're talking about other stuff today. What else do you think the Pacers did well in game 1, particularly things that you were like, oh, they could do that again easily? Yes, I've seen the Pacers do that lots of times.
And real quick, we talk about being at home. Obviously, more so than last year in the regular season, Tyrese Haliburton, which is a whole different guy at home than he was on the road. Very, very big split differential, and he was amazing in game 1. So I can't imagine what kind of level he would get to if he stepped it up in those home games. But things that they did better. One thing that they did right away that didn't seem to work that well, which I think is something that they could really build off of into future games, was just really targeting Jared Allen with Pascal Siakam. I mean, like the first several plays were just designed to separate him out, make Jared Allen go all over the court, and then try to defend the Pascal Siakam 3. Kind of mixed results on that, but that's something that they can really go to. They didn't really have to in this game, but I think that that's a very, very exploitable matchup that the Pacers can use. And in one of those games where Siakam really has it going, they can really burn them, I think, and so that can add a new dimension to the Pacers offense that we kind of haven't seen in here. And then about the defense, it's ignoring the issues with kind of defending the rim in some of the bench units, which they might be able to figure out by playing bigs a little bit more. We'll see how the rotation goes. Just the defensive effort that they gave, in that fourth quarter. Obviously, Tyrese Haliburton got a lot of highlights there. Nembhard really stepped up well too, and in Nesmith, the trio of those guys are just doing a really outstanding job against a team that has to be defended well on the perimeter in order for a team to have a shot. Man, they did an incredible job. And I know we've seen it in spurts, but they won a game with defense, I felt. And, obviously hitting some crazy threes from Nembhard didn't hurt. But that was really nice to see. And that's something that's, a foundation of playoff basketball, winning playoff basketball, is when all else fails, you can lean back on that defense. And then controlling the game. I mean, I feel like I talk about this every single time I make a spot on Locked On Pacers. It's, when a team has a big run and they punch you in the mouth, what do? The Pacers have folded a lot, honestly, when they've gotten punched in the mouth in games like this, especially if they've maybe held a lead, team take a big run, then they start to crumble and they kind of fall apart. And it was a big emphasis. They mic'd up Haliburton, and you could hear him kind of in the game talking about how important it was. And then post game, he was talking about it. And they took that time out. And then they say, I was watching it with my son. He's like, they've got to calm down. Get back. They've got to have a couple good possessions, calm down the crowd, just like the basic talk. But that's exactly what they did. They pulled it. Yeah. I mean, you can say it all you want, but to actually do it is really outstanding. And it seemed like they did it kind of with ease. They just did very calm and collected, and they methodical. They slowed down the pace a little bit, made sure they got quality shots. And obviously it was just kind of exemplified by that Myles Turner pump fake and then letting the ball go for an open corner three with the clock winding down. That was just a good metaphor for everything that happened for them to kind of wrestle control of that game again. And, we talked about it before last year about playoff experience, like which of these young teams that are emerging in the Eastern Conference that are going to be contending for years to come, Cavaliers and Pacers being two of them, who's going to get the playoff experience of going deep and who's going to get first, and how's that going to pay off down the road? And like this definitely looked like one team who had been through many playoff battles. With respect to the Cavaliers demolishing the Miami Heat, I'm glad they got to do it. Sure, they had a lot of fun. That was not really playoff experience. This is the first real playoff experience that they might have in a series that they hope to win, and so they're still sharpening that kind of tools and that kind of that skill set. So it's kind of interesting to see the Pacers like play a team that doesn't have all those war stories, like Milwaukee does. And they really look like the veteran team out there. That was very cool.
I remember you tweeted, Z did, whatever, posted. I'm done with that.
No, it's tweeted. It's just tweeted.
I'm saying tweet until it's over. Yeah. You tweeted in game 1 of Pacers Bucks about wondering how they would close with a big lead, because we've seen them even against the Bucks. Wow, Aaron Gordon just had an insane dunk. We've seen them even against the Bucks in this regular season, like blow big leads a lot and like lose the game, right? How would they? And the Bucks went on a tiny run, and then they missed some threes, and the Pacers won. Game 2, they survived the Bucks run. Game 1 of this series, they survived the Cavalanche, right? They scored 17 points in like 4 minutes. I was like, oh boy, this might be going sideways. And then they were winning by the end of the quarter. Right? Like that is an evolution for them, even from the middle of this very season. To address other things you said, the first Nembhard 3, you've been to a million NBA games. Like the sound that fans make when like a surprising shot goes in or like a momentum shifting shot goes in, that was a really good Cavs crowd. I will give them a lot of credit. That was the loudest I've ever heard in a game. They were just like, can you believe this guy? Like the Cavs were fighting like crazy to come back in that second half. They're like, that goes in. It was spectacular. And that's just like,
it's
go ahead.
You said before we recorded concepts, like, don't say shooting fairness. Just don't say
you can't say.
And I totally get why. I totally get why. But it is very funny that as of today, Nembhard is literally the greatest three-point shooter in playoff history. He really is. He's shooting 51% for his career. That is the highest career playoff three-point shooting percentage ever recorded. And so obviously that's going to go down a little bit. But man, it's like we were saying, they got open shots.
Yeah.
They've been averaging over 28 wide open threes in playoff games this year. They got the 30 in this game. They increased it a little bit, and then they hit a lot. There was like 13 of those that they hit. That's not variance, man. They are cranking out open threes game after game after game after game, and then they're going to hit a lot of them. And they've hit over 45% of their threes 3 times out of 6 games in this postseason so far. And so maybe they hit like 2 more. It's like the Myles 3 and the Nembhard 3. Those are the weird ones, right? But everything else, those are just high quality shots. Yeah. And the Cavaliers don't get as many open threes on the season.
They'll make more. They'll make more though.
But the Pacers held them to only 11 wide open threes. That's about 7 less than they've been averaging in this postseason so far. And you can just see the defensive intensity. that's going to have a big impact on their ability to hit three. So it wasn't just like a kind of a, a randomness, like some people might want to say. Maybe a couple of those shots, but certainly not. It's not going to get cut in half. I mean, the Cavaliers have to show me that they figured out a way to stop the Pacers from getting the marching line of open threes that they get game after game. If they can solve that in game 2, then we can start talking about the fact that they might cool the Pacers off from there, and that might be a factor. But until they prove that, I mean, there's no reason to believe that they won't be able to get it. And, they might hit 13 instead of 19, but, it's still going to be a lot of points.
I got a funny comment from, I presume, a Cavs fan on my Game 1 podcast that said, the Pacers have never and will never again shoot 50% from three in a playoff game. I was like, bro, that's the third time they've done it the last 2 years. Like, this team does that like kind of like once a series at this point.
It's been like one away a couple times already. So yeah.
Yeah, they're like, it's obviously like a warm shooting game. Like, they are pretty good at doing this. To go through a lot of the other stuff you said, the Jared Allen part was interesting. I always find when the Pacers like get a mismatch, they like Brook Lopez, whoever he was guarding in both the Bucks series last 2 years, and then in Game 5 of this year's series when the Bucks were putting Smalls on Siakam when he'd set a screen for Haliburton down the stretch of that game. I find it so interesting to see how the Pacers navigate, knowing they have a mismatch they like, and also realizing like we're not as good when we like hunt mismatches over and over again, right? Like that's not how they want to play. So they did get some success attacking Allen. And I thought like everybody attacked Jared Allen, which was really interesting. Like when guards would get Jared Allen, they would be like, oh, great, let's drive at this guy. And I thought that was really interesting. I thought he'd be, let's say, more impactful defensively. And that's not to say he won't later in the series. So I agree with you that like they didn't really expand from it, but I'll be curious how much they try to strike that balance of like using whoever Allen is guarding in actions a lot versus playing their own style while doing that, right? That's, I think, the Pacers always kind of internal battle on the offensive end, but I agree they were good at that. Their defense, Caitlin Cooper pointed this out perfectly. If you rewatch the game, you'll really notice it. They did a good job limiting the Cavs' volume of passes, which sounds weird, but they were just like kind of keeping stuff contained to like one side of the floor, keeping the action very simple for the Cavs, which in some ways is good for them, but like they couldn't get really any advanced stuff going. A lot of the Cavs' best possessions were just like Evan Mobley screen for Donovan Mitchell, one pass, that was the play. Those two are good players. That's probably scary for the Pacers, but still, like, they were a high-volume passing team in the regular season. The Pacers, just in general, did a better job knocking the Cavs off their style than the inverse, and they won the game. The other thing I would say they did well that has been quasi-talked about, but now we have more numbers because the day is over and the tracking data is all in. The pace was a Pacers game, not a Cavs game. In the first round, every game, even when the Pacers won, they were like, we got to be faster. We're playing too slow. And I was like, that didn't feel that slow to me. And then you look at the possession numbers. You're like, wow, yeah, that was really slow. 99 possessions for the Pacers in game 1. That's their second fastest game of the playoffs. When they play fast, they're better. We know that. Other teams struggle with that. So we could keep going, I think. But a long list, not a long list, a good sized list of things that were not just like ball go and basket, that they did better than the 64-win team in the first game.
Yeah, it did kind of seem like, they were maybe in Milwaukee a little bit too eager to maybe try to bring the ball up top and let the guys run to the corners and that be it. But the Pacers always force the ball into the corners as fast as possible just to see if you get that quick mismatch. And they kind of gave up on that a little bit in Milwaukee. And I wonder if that's where some of that pace slowed down just a little bit. But they got some good buckets out of that in this Cavs series. And Carlisle's it's been a topic of discussion about like how deep the bench has gone. I think did he play 11 players, I believe.
Yeah, Jarris in the first half and Bryant in the second half. So 10 per half.
Yeah, I was gonna say, part of that was because I think he was going to try to not play a center in the bench unit. And then they kind of realized we're going to have to play a center in the bench unit.
You know what's hilarious, Dave? Before the series, I said, I think this will be a Thomas Bryant series. And I got a lot of pushback on that. And in the first half, I put a note in my notes. I still have it. It says, oh, everybody was right. And then in the second half, you put in Thomas Bryant. I have a note below that just says, yes. But Bryant did not play very well. Anyway, keep going.
Well, no, but maybe with a little bit more playing this, it's like because someone's going to have to. I think that's going to be. It's just too big of an improvement. It doesn't matter if he is giving some silly turnovers. He's you're gonna have to have somebody. We're gonna see Bradley in the series. Maybe.
If Thomas Bryant makes 11-foot post fadeaways every game, yeah, he'll play every game.
That's right.
Everyone, quick little break so we can talk about FanDuel. The NBA playoffs, they're in full swing, and every night delivers some highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. All these players showing up in the biggest moments. Nikola Jokic, the Knicks in general, the Pacers. Tracking their trends can help you build your next big bet. If you combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action's unfolding, you can win that way. If you've got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with the same game parlay? And how could a $200 bonus bet add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? Well, that is what FanDuel can offer you. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. If you head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet, if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Are we on to the what needs to be better for game 2?
I was gonna get there when you finish up your point, so you can do it. Just take.
I'm done. I'm done giving them their flowers. Let's talk about the flaws, Tony. Let's talk about the flaws.
Yeah, I have a lot of stuff written down that they've said or that I believe, but you can go first, and we can get to this.
Well, I would say that like we've mentioned again, they've got to have some sort of rim protection in the second unit. I mean, it was just way too easy to get inside, and it looked like that was just going to be completely unsustainable. So they've got to figure out, who can they play and how are they going to play them in a way that isn't just a complete disaster offensively. And I think that's kind of a tough puzzle. I mean, this is one of the times where you're maybe feeling the real hurt of they looked like they were going to have maybe too many centers coming into the season, and it looked like they were really well set up on center depth, and poof, it just goes away pretty early on in the season. So, but they've got to figure out a creative way to get Bryant in there. And speaking of Bryant, because thinking of that, outlet pass that was immediately stolen. Obviously, turnovers. Now, I went back and watched every turnover. It wasn't as bad as maybe the numbers might seem because there were a lot of offensive fouls. There were a lot of plays that were whistled dead pretty quickly because they were jostling for position and they called it and they go for it. And so there was a fair number of those kind of turnovers. Those dead ball ones. But Myles had a pretty ridiculous pass. I mean, he was just kind of trying to feel where the teammate was and throw it, which is cool, but you have to get it like somewhat in the ballpark if that's going to happen. And obviously Thomas Bryant, that pass was just lazy. And that kind of reminded me, Tony, why am I thinking of the name? I was way off on the name. Sam Young playing for the Pacers, it just didn't get enough minutes, and he had to play, and then he was just kind of a disaster because it's just I'm just getting minutes in the playoffs now, and then he just didn't know what to do with his hands, and then he was just doing various, and then it's just he didn't really play. It just didn't have the experience. It's kind of I think that Thomas Bryant obviously is feeling that a little bit. He just didn't have a. I mean, he's played plenty in the playoffs before, but he's kind of I think he was thrown in a situation where he wasn't really expecting to play very much, and so
he's a champion, Dave, a champion.
Like I say, he's been more serious than almost any other Pacer, but
he only played one playoff game with the Nuggets, that whole playoff run. But I still bring up that he's a champion. So
I mean, but it does. I think it does count for something, But it's there were so many just muffled passes, or you just caught the ball, you're about to shoot it, someone slaps the ball out right away, catches that weren't quite caught. Top and not quite ready for a pass from McConnell underneath, and so that maybe a sense of nervousness or not a sense of confidence or security with the ball. That just feels like a very correctable thing. A little bit of game win jitters, knowing that you're on the road. This is such a crucial game, and they want it so bad. I can very easily see this being the only game where that kind of thing happens. And so the good news, there were a couple of sloppy turnovers, but I think that a lot of the ones that were actually committed were pretty correctable, I think.
They had quite the turnover disparity of either dramatically awful or it's not that big of a deal. Nothing in the middle. Yeah, okay. Obi's had 2 passes this playoffs that he didn't catch that he got flamed for, and I thought both were just really hard to catch low passes This one against the Cavs was he probably could have caught it. The first one against the Bucks, McConnell threw like a fastball at his knees, and everybody's like, "What's Obi doing?" I'm like, "What is he supposed to do? How is he supposed to?" Okay, the turnover thing's interesting because the nature of them made them less impactful than the like raw, like, "Oh my gosh, 16 turnover numbers." Look, however, I look back on this game, you look back on this game, anyone does, and they can see that the free throw numbers were pretty even, 15 to 18. The Cavs actually took more, and the Cavs still took 15 more shots. So the tandem relationship of offensive rebounds for Cleveland and turnovers in general, the Cavs are the best offense in the league this year. Like, you cannot give them that many more chances to be the Cavs, right? Especially when the other thing you said is they still were getting rim pressure and causing some strain, even on a night where they made less than 1 in 4 threes. And there's some this is like a Tony East workshopping theory that's probably not very good. So this is now the third game this season the Pacers have given up 70 or more points in the paint and won. They're 3, including the regular season, they're 3-2 when they give up 70 or more points in the paint, which they're much worse when they give up in the 60s. My running theory is that like if you're only getting baskets in the paint, you're not getting enough from everywhere else, you actually lose. But it was so much, including off those offensive rebounds, that like clearly they have to fix something there. Like a lot of Turner's having to step up, a Biggs open for like a hook shot or just some little move, or Mitchell's getting some like crazy free run to the rim. Like a lot of guys played well for the Cavs at the basket. So the turnover / possession battle, that's untenable. The Pacers cannot play out the rest of the series as poorly as that went, specifically for them. And they all pointed to second chance points and points in the paint being very related as a part of their struggles from game one, as I'm sure you've heard since you had a lot of media availabilities. So that is certainly a thing that they'll have to figure out. And offensively, I don't feel like the Pacers got enough rim pressure. I think they did well to finish there, but they didn't get as many like zippy passes out of there as it feels like they did. The way Myles Turner described it today is they had a lot of they need more possessions where they're either getting a great look late clock or early clock. You felt like they played 2 in the middle in terms of their tempo with those, and a lot of that would be like get in the paint, not a good pass available, you're taking the next action for a shot. The Cavs are good. Like Evan Mobley looks like there's 2 of them on the floor. I get why you're at times willing to shoot a shot that might not be your best, but on a night where they got good threes, I didn't love their shot quality inside the arc, but it was kind of masked by good offensive process attacking Allen, making threes, all sorts of stuff like that. Do you have any other adjustments?
No, I don't think so. I think that I think that they played a very good game here. Other than just tighten up the rotation a little bit so that they are having someone big on there at any given time, I was very pleased with the overall quality of the shots that they ended up getting on offense. And I love the pressure that they were able to put, at the end of the quarter. I mean, obviously, trying to figure out a way to slow down Mitchell when he's in like bull rush mode. That is not an easy puzzle to solve. And I'm not 100% sure what the solution is, other than just to try to make Myles Turner on the floor as much as possible when that happens. I'm not 100% sure who on the team can slow that down, except for Walker, I guess, when it's just like, if he's just really insistent on going into the rim, just have him fight, give up as many fouls as possible. That's going to be a tough thing for the Pacers to slow down. And the good news is he looked exhausted. I remember he shot that pull-up 3. I guess there was a look with the coach, kind of like, "Hey, sorry," but I was just like, I don't blame you, man. He's just running I know that they're amazing NBA athletes in incredible condition, but like, it's not easy to just bull rush the rim over and over and over again like that. He can't do that, obviously, for an entire series. But if it's in the fourth quarter of a game and he has the energy to do it, if he starts doing that, the Pacers don't have a lot of great solutions that I can see.
I actually think Mitchell was a little hurt at some point in this game.
Yeah.
Like he had Haliburton in the third quarter, and Haliburton played a great defensive game, but he just didn't take it. He gave it to Strus for a Strus-Allen pick and roll. I'm like, Donovan Mitchell, like in a game where he's taking 30 shots, like didn't want to do that. It was really strange. We'll talk about injuries later because it's a Pacers playoff series. Of course, we have to talk about injuries at some point for the opposing team.
Of course, if you talk to Kenny Atkinson, it's not the Pacers' fault. but it kind of is.
Yeah,
It might be.
he
And
towed the line. Hey, that's why he won Coach of the Year. He towed the line like a freaking champ today. He crushed it. He is very complimentary of the Pacers, so I think he kind of felt bad the next day being like, I think those guys are really good, Bus. Like, chill out, dudes. So a couple of things to respond to that in my notes. Just because so many guys said it, I typed in the adjustments. I don't know what the adjustment is, but they all were like, yeah, Mitchell's a beast. I'm like, what are you going to do better against him? The only two things we haven't said that I have typed down. I think if they're not going to play Thomas Bryant, they can play Ben Shepherd, but I don't think they can play both, especially not together. Like, go all in on offense. You have to against the Cavs. And I think they correctly realize they need size against Cleveland and the lineups they're going to go with. So I would go Walker and Bryant as my fringe guys. If Jarris isn't making shots, then go Ben Shepherd, because great, I get it. You need the point of attack guy. But that's kind of the stance I took before the series, and I think the way game one played out, that ended up being the case. Something Myles Turner said that I am not smart enough to talk about that I have to type in here and say is he said their screening could be better, like the angles and the way they're doing it. If you have a student of FI to be like, yeah, they sucked at screening this way, congratulations, you can tell me all about that. And I think the Cavs played some goofy zones for like 5 possessions in game one. They were second in the league in zone frequency in the regular season. It would not shock me if they went zone heavier, especially if they're missing key guys in game two and just try to gook up the game. And that has caused problems for the Pacers this year. That is the end of my adjustments to keep an eye on in game two. Dave, it's a Pacers playoff series, and you won't believe it, but a very good player of the other team is injured once again, on top of the toe injury for Darius Garland, where he's still TBD for game two. DeAndre Hunter hurt his thumb on a play we all saw. Ben Mathurin blocked him. They reviewed it and called it not a foul, which I cannot believe. I still think it's a foul a full day later, but what do I know? The refs reviewed it and called it not a foul. I've had 2
incidental contact, Tony. Incidental contact.
His left arm is just all over his chest. That's 2 marquee fouls that have been reviewed and called a certain way in the NBA recently that I disagreed with the refs. This one I thought was a foul on Mathurin, and I don't think Tim Hardaway was fouled on the 3 at the end of game 4 of Pistons and Knicks, which is apparently a very, very, very uncommon take. Evan Mobley. Go ahead,
Tony. I'm with you.
Yes.
You and I are brothers on that for sure. I couldn't believe the way that the people were reacting to that. Yeah, I mean, it's like you don't call that.
The problem is the refs after the game were like, yeah, that was a foul. Like in the pool report, I'm like, crap.
Yeah, but there's so many things that if you slowed it down, it would be like, okay, that's a foul. And that goes into the soul of like the block. And I guess like from one angle, he was grabbing a little bit more. The angle that we saw on the replay initially had his hand kind of up. You can touch somebody on a block. You can put your arm on somebody on a block. It's just, you have to put force on him, and if he did, he did. But what I'm saying is a thing that drove me nuts about that Hardaway play is that people would say like, well, if this was like the second quarter, they would have called it. BS. If it was the second quarter, they wouldn't have dreamed of calling it. The only time they would call it is right at the end of the game.
I agree.
And it's the opposite of what people are saying in that sense. But like, no, I'm with you. I'm team no call on that one for sure.
Someone find me a clip where Tim Hardaway jumps up to the right, shooting a 3. And then, I'll believe that he was going to shoot when Josh Hart was jumping up to the side. That's not how he shoots. It was a very smart shot make, but like, you don't get the foul because you up. I don't know. The ref said it was a foul. I have no ground to stand on. A lot of people I've talked to who are in or on teams were like, yeah, you're an idiot. It was a foul, but whatever. I don't think it was. Mathurin did foul, I thought, Hunter. However, I will say this. The refs were calling nothing in that game. Like nothing in Pacers crowd. So I think it's okay. In the flow of that game, it wasn't called. That dislocation of a thumb for Hunter, his shooting hand, significant. He's had a great shooting season after kind of being middling in that for a while. And then Evan Mobley landed on Myles Turner's ankle on a hook shot he took in the middle of the fourth quarter. I think that's the play Atkinson was probably the most upset about. You see a replay of it, you're like, oh, yeah, I get why you're not happy about that. Turner kind of shuffling out to contest. You never see landing space fouls called on a shot that's like 6 feet away from the basket, but it is what happened on the play. Serious doubt cast.
Sort of.
It's harder when he's like with Zaza like chopped his feet like 6 times, right? Turner lunges at him once. Like it's very clearly not intended to be a landing space issue in a way that some of those fouls become, but he did land in his landing space like he did.
But a prerequisite of that coming into play is a closeout, the existence of a closeout.
Yes.
That wasn't a closeout. That was a primary defender in the paint. Of course, they're going to be close to each other. And he was already had his foot planted before he even really jumped. I mean, like, what is he supposed to do? Withdraw his foot? It's ridiculous.
He definitely lunges at him after Mobley jumps for the shot.
No, he does not lunge at him. He shifts to contest the shot. There's a huge difference between if someone's out on the perimeter, you're in the paint, and you go, oh crap, and you run out, and then you run and you lunge at him, and then you have to worry about where your feet are placed.
It was a natural defensive motion, certainly. Like, I'm not saying Myles Turner is doing something wrong at all, to be clear.
They're basically playing in a post. I mean, like,
yes,
those rules are not for that situation at all.
And
it's unfortunate, but
I agree with that. Yeah. It is unfortunate. And regardless, if Mobley can't go or is limited and Hunter's limited, that's tough for the Cavs. And Garland.
And you mentioned how well Hunter's shooting. He is, by the way, the 20th greatest playoff shooter in the history for basketball right now. He is. He's 20th. We got 2 of the top 20 in the series.
Gotta look it up. So look, here's what I would say. That, like, first of all, people are gonna spin whatever silly narrative they want if you're a fan of the Pacers about these injuries the last 2 years. Like, they have gotten lucky. They just have, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
It's a fact of life. They have to take advantage of that still. The other thing I will say is I was there. I don't know if you were there. The Cavs went to Indy with no Mitchell, no Garland, no Mobley, no Strus less than a month ago, and we're winning with 4 minutes to go in the game. This is still extremely hard. Like, not even close to decided.
Right.
What are your thoughts on this injury stuff?
Well, it's just, I mean, I always just get disappointed. I mean, I always say, obviously, how much I love the Pacers and want them to win and have dreamt of them winning games since I was a kid and all that sort of stuff. At the end of the day, though, I want to see great basketball. I truly do. And I would prefer, and, sorry if I'm causing any weird juju by saying this sort of thing, I would prefer the Pacers lose an amazing series than win a sweep. Now, obviously, if they swept their way to a title, I'm sure that I would console myself with a champagne, but you understand what I'm saying. I would prefer to see a great game. I almost didn't go to game 5 of the Bucks series because I thought that it was going to be a blowout one way or the other. Either the Pacers wouldn't show up or the Bucks would give up and that would be it. And so I had friends with some extra tickets. I ended up going, and of course that was one of the greatest games ever. So I'm glad that they went. But it's because I want to see great games. That's what's really what happened. And when players get injured, obviously you just don't get the best out of a team, and so it makes the quality of play lower. And that's the whole point of playoff basketball. It's the whole reason that we get obsessed with this stuff, and why it is such an important part of our lives. I mean, it isn't to see them take the next step. I think it's to witness greatness as much as possible, and the construct of the playoffs creates that greatness. And when players get injured, you just don't get it. And so I care a little less about oh dang, the Pacers can't say. Some other fans might be oh, you get injury luck and you're moving on, and that's the only reason why. Okay, I don't really care that much about that narrative, but it is going to decline the quality of play probably. Yes. And that's a big bummer. It's we want to see the Pacers rise to the challenge and beat any team at their very best. So, is Kenny Atkinson right in the sense that maybe the Pacers are just a little too physical sometimes? I've always I've said this a lot, and I've gotten pushback maybe sometimes from people. And so I'm going to ask you, Tony, because I don't know if I've ever asked you before. On a scale of 1 to 10, how dirty of a player is Andrew Nembhard? How dirty would you say that he is?
4 or 5?
Oh, he's much higher than that. And he gets away with so many little elbows, pumping people when he's not supposed to.
People do that. Everybody does that. Everybody does.
No, he's way better. No, he's a master, man. He's a master of his craft at that kind of stuff. And I love it. It's great.
He is good at a lot of little things like that. I agree with that, but I guess.
Yeah. And so
no one he has defended has ever said to me that they feel like he's doing that, is why I'm not oh, that's so unusual, if that makes sense. I'll say this, a non-Pacers player I talked to about Dyson Daniels this year, right? Because he was so good on defense, all of a sudden was oh yeah, he bumps you like crazy. People will say that if they believe it,
Right. But he's so good at everybody tries to. but in the like, oh, oopsie sort of situation. Anyway, we can get derailed on talking about that. I have an appreciation for the little sneaky stuff that he does all the time.
Can I give an Andrew Nembhard appreciation thing then too that has nothing to do with Pacers Cavs? Okay, so if anyone wants to find a full game feed of Pacers Bucks game 5, Giannis would get fouled and go to the free throw line, and before he even goes to the line, he stands behind the 3-point line and puts his hands on his knees and like catches his breath. I don't know if it was like making Drew mad or if he was just annoyed at how long this whole process took. In the second half of that game, he would just go stand right in front of Giannis and make the exact same pose, hands on his knees, looking at the ref and breathing, like inches away from him. And he did it every single time he got fouled. And I was the first time I thought maybe he was also just catching his breath. I'm like, oh my God, he's doing this on purpose. He does have like that little like, I'm annoying kind of guy thing going on in games, I think.
Love that man.
Great player.
That would be an interesting, like, is there credence to the Pacers getting a little extra physical? I don't know. I don't think so. I think it just ends up being, the Pacers have a lot of young players.
Yep.
And they play really hard and they limit the minutes of their starters.
I wrote a whole story about how they intentionally limit the minutes of their starters with the playoffs in mind during the regular season.
Absolutely. And so that, if you want to play at that quick of a pace and also blitz people on closeouts to be able to limit their 3-point windows, you're going to need fresh legs, and so that's another reason why they play so many players. And, fresh legs don't get injured as much, like they don't. That is just, kind of how it works. And it's sort of the anti-Thibodeau strategy that the Pacers have been employing for a long time. And so I feel like injuries happen in the playoffs, obviously. You don't want to happen to big stars. I think it's maybe more interesting just like how little injury issues the Pacers have had.
Agreed.
I think it's a little bit more of a highlight, like, oh, the Pacers always fight people that are injured. But also, they're just always healthy in the playoffs. Like, they barely have any sort of real hit. The only real thing is obviously Haliburton, who ended up missing some time. But I think that's part of what the highlight is, why it sounds like such a stark contrast, is because of just how much health that the Pacers have been able to sustain.
Haliburton's the only starter that's missed games the last 2 years in the playoffs. Obviously, Mathurin missed last year's postseason, and pending what you think the Pacers center rotation would be, I think it was very clear Isaiah Jackson was going to be the backup center this year. Their backup center is missing the playoffs this year, but Thomas Bryant's like a good player, right? They're not like, oh my God, we're so screwed. So yeah, they have been, and I think you're right that youth is a part of it. They have been in their own ways fortunate, but it's again, I wrote about it. It's intentional. And you know why I wrote about it? It wasn't like this. It did like come to me as an idea. Because Pascal Siakam's agent went on the record and was like, yes, we love that Rick Carlisle does this. Like, this is very good for our clients. He's also Andrew Nembhard's agent. This is not I didn't make this up. This isn't like a non-known thing.
Well, sure. And, I think it's there's always this, how much, what role does a coach play and how much of an impact that they have on the team. I've seen so many coaches will say, we had to go 8-man in the playoffs. We had to run these heavy minutes because we just, there was no other way to win. We didn't have the pieces. Maybe we didn't have the depth. We didn't figure out how to, get those quality minutes out of other people. So that's why we had to do it. But, if you look at the Pacers playing, obviously, Ben Shepherd minutes, TJ McConnell minutes, obviously, he has his sort of ups and downs, but he's obviously very blossomed as, in Indiana Pacer. They get high quality minutes out of people. They figure out how to sustain winning playoff basketball with those bench units. And I know that sometimes fans get frustrated. They say, like, I can't believe he has 3 bench players, 4 bench players out right now. They're kind of getting killed, but it's part of an overarching strategy. And it's, keeping those, starting players fresh, not just in this game in particular, but in the long haul of the series. It may be they bleed some points at this particular point of the series, but when it comes to the crucial games of the series, game 5, game 6, game 7, deeper into the playoffs, that is going to have, that's going to pay off there. And they don't have their star point guard running as hard as possible towards the rim every single play in the third quarter, just trying to keep the team in it They have a very well balanced attack where people are fresh and able to hit crazy shots in the fourth quarter, block shots, and get some defensive turnovers. They obviously had a little bit more at the end of that game. That's part of it, And so I think it was JJ Redick was even complaining about this recently too. I don't have the people to play more. It was like, you got to figure out how to get the people to play more. You got to figure out how to get quality minutes out of those guys. And if you are going to highlight one of the reasons why Carlo's a good coach is that he has figured out a way to beat the 1 seed on the road in game 1 with an 11-man rotation. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
He went 8 deep against the Bucks last year, but every other series besides that, he has not done that. I need to go back and really remember that series because I referenced that a lot going into the playoffs this year because the bench was worse in the regular season. I thought, oh, maybe they'll go 8 more often. And it's been the complete opposite. They have not gone 8 deep ever at all. And that's like such a common trope. And I agree that it is a lot of what you're saying is the reason that they like to do it. And it has me. I wish more people thought like this. Like instead of just being like, I do obviously disagree with the combinations he puts on the floor sometimes. Like no one is infallible, but it does make me wonder, like philosophically, for him, is it something to this effect? Like what percentage of Tyrese Haliburton is TJ McConnell better than? For if Tyrese Haliburton you're getting 76% of him because he's gassed, like make up the percentage in your head. What percentage all of a sudden is McConnell better than him? Right. That's kind of how you have to decide how fresh you want your players. Is that kind of ratio, I think, right? And I think if you keep them in the 80+ percentage all the time, they're going to look good for their 34 minutes. But the question is like, if they play 38, but those last 4 minutes, they're at 70% of their usual selves, is the backup a better player? And the Pacers have a lot of good depth that can play their style. So it makes it easier for them to answer those questions. But that's kind of what his rotation style makes me think about. I'm not saying I have those numbers written out for all the players. It's just kind of how I process what they're doing.
Yeah, and I remember there's some commentary in this Buck series, not the one before, where it's like Walker seemed to play well for the first 2 games, and then they played Shepherd in the third. And I was like, why are they doing this? And I kind of thought they're up 2-0, right? And it looks like they might be able to have this fairly well in hand. I kind of felt like he was just like, we might need Ben Shepherd later. No. So I'm just going to play him a little bit just to see what he does in this match.
I think you're right. You watched post-game media. He said he was happy in the Cleveland game 1 that he got to play 11 and see what his guys could do. Right. He now has, I have at least 7 to 8 minutes of film for every player on my team of what they can do and help me and not help me with against the Cavs. Like, I think there's something to that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that is sometimes there are some weird lineups. I genuinely think sometimes he's just like, I wonder what would happen if I did this. I saw something weird in a practice and I was like, oh, that actually was kind of a good pass. Let me just give them a few minutes here just to see. And then knowing that it's not the end of the world. It's a 48-minute game. It's a 7-game series. We can lose a few minutes here and there in the pursuit of keeping people fresh and learning some new information about what we have. And then knowing that you can make it up when the starters get, obviously, if you put in an awful rotation and they lose 12 points in 3 minutes, then that's something that is beyond any sort of tinkering or experimentation. But that is my instinct of kind of why he likes to sort of tinker on the edges and in the fringes. But you know what? I mean, like, I bet he probably wished that Bryant was a little bit more ready to go in this game, but I think he will be on Tuesday, and that experimentation I think will continue.
A good podcast goes 10 minutes on a topic that was not on the card and makes it very interesting. And people who made it this far certainly treated to. We weren't even like making a point. We're just like, I think this is something that might be happening.
That's you know what that's exactly why white guys get in front of mics, just the BS about nothing. That's the whole point.
I'm glad we at least add nuance. I'm in a hotel. I don't have my usual stuff. I had to watch ESPN today, and they were making the point after game 1. Well, the Pacers went 3-1 against the Cavs in the regular season. I'm like, no one knows what they're talking about. Can I please listen to people who know what they're talking about? Hopefully today everybody feels like, Dave, that we knew what we're talking about. Where can people find you and you're yapping about the Pacers?
I'm Twitter. I'm tweeting again. The playoffs have been interesting.
You have been tweeting.
I'll come out of semi-retirement. It's been fun. I got ratioed by a Cavs fan today. I wasn't very happy about that.
Okay,
like
Justin Rowan replying to you was great though. Justin's one of the OGs. He's the best.
What's that? Oh,
Justin Rowan,
that was great. But it's about the stupid differential thing.
Oh yeah.
And he said, somebody said like we've been doing it for like 20 years. I'm like, you've been doing it for 20 years? You've been doing it for 20 years. And like you said, Justin, of course he's an OG. Remember him from back in the day? We did a lot of podcasts together and all that sort of stuff. And he said, "Oh no, you don't understand. They've been doing it for 20 years, and the differential it's referring to the home crowd. And when they say it's plus this, it's like that's supposed to quantify the difference that the home crowd is making." I said, "Oh, so so it isn't just a nickname for the fans. It is quantifying. Like, what happens if they're down 30? Do they show it then and blame it on the fans?"
You guys suck tonight, crowd.
He said, yeah. He said, yeah. If it's negative, they show it too. So, like, the diff also means you guys aren't loud enough, and we're down 30, and you're the difference. Why? It's just so stupid. It's so stupid.
Dave, now I have to bleep.
I know. I knew it as it came out. It's towards the end. It's the 43-36 mark. There you go.
I'm not taking out that you just said the mark so that everybody can get the inside baseball for how editing goes. Tomorrow, obviously,
it's gonna be 20 minutes. Like, what are they talking about?
Post game 2 podcast from the arena. Danny and I will do our crossover thing again. We figured out why our audio quality was a disaster. Sorry, that was two guys who do this for a living forgetting how to use a computer for 5 minutes, which was so embarrassing. We both got back home and we're like, oh boy, what have we done?
I've told this story on Twitter before, but when we first started the podcast and we were nobody with no following whatsoever, we asked Bob Kravitz to be on, and he was very generous and he did it. And he talked for like 45 minutes and we were like, oh, this is so cool. And then we hit stop and then we say, all right, great. Can we listen to it real quick? I'm like, no, I forgot to hit record. So I didn't get any of it. And so then they had to contact him and say, sorry, if you're going to look for it, we didn't have it because you recorded. It's like, oh, I'm driving somewhere tomorrow. We'll do it again tomorrow. And so then we called him up and he just like said the exact same thing and then got it all on tape. Awesome. I mean, he was just like, yeah, it's no problem. It happens, guys. Good luck with everything. Blah, 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 blah. What a great guy. I'm always a Kravitz defender because of that, because that was a very cool moment. But
I have never gotten to hit record. I have twice now finished recording and then immediately for just autopilot reasons just completely deleted the recording, like immediately. That one was a weird one. The second time I did it, I was so mad. Whatever. Hopefully I'm not mad after game 2 and can bring you a good product of Locked On Pacers from Rocket Arena once again. And injured Cavs, chance to win 2 on the road. Whew, big game for the Pacers. I am on the People's app at Tony R. East, same thing on Blue Sky. And I have an account there at Locked On Pacers for this podcast. Dave is on there as well at Miller Time Pod. Rest in peace to the podcast itself, but still a great place to get these many thoughts bouncing off the wall for 15 minutes about the Indiana Pacers. Thank you all so much for listening. See you very soon.